Hello everybody, Bradley here, and as fans of video games, I'm sure you've noticed that over the past several years, purchasing video games has become a progressively worse experience for consumers, and unfortunately, I think that Civilization 7 is probably engaging in some of the practices that have made that experience worse. Now, I'm not here to take shots specifically at Civilization 7. They are far from the most egregious example of some of these practices. However, they are contributing to what I view as a pretty big problem in the gaming industry for consumers, and as a consumer talking to other consumers, I wanted to take this opportunity to discuss it while we're talking about a game that we're all excited about playing. To engage in this discussion, the first thing we have to do is go to the Steam page and take a look at the different editions for Civilization 7. We have the base game, the deluxe edition, and the Founders Edition. Now, purchasing games used to be pretty simple. I did it myself for a long time as a teenager. The first time I ever went to purchase my own game was Resident Evil 4 at the local GameStop. I walked in, I gave them some money, they gave me a video game. That was the end of my transaction. I took the video game home and I played it. Once I had Resident Evil 4 loaded up in my GameCube, I never had to worry about it again. We made an exchange. I gave them money, they gave me a video game, everyone was happy. I really love Resident Evil 4. Now, the first part of the problem is that every game, again, not just Civ 7, but every single game needs to have 900 different editions. Base games, deluxe editions, founders editions, slap my ass and call me Sally editions, the uber goober super cool edition. Every game needs to have as many editions as possible that are as expensive as possible to try and get as much money from you as possible. Let's start here with Civilization 7 with the price. Now, I want to be clear, you can charge whatever you want for your video game. You made it, you can sell it for whatever you want. If Civ 7 was $5 or $500, they made the game, they can sell it for whatever you want, and you as a consumer can decide to buy it. So it being $90 Canadian, sorry friends if you're in a different country with different currency, but I'm Canadian, so I'll talk in Canadian dollars. But at $90 Canadian, this will already be the most expensive game I have ever purchased just for the base game. Again, they can charge whatever they want, but going into the deluxe edition, the founders edition, and what we're going to discuss, it is good to know that on a base level, this will already be the most money I've ever spent on the base edition of a video game. Now, as a consumer who's really excited to play Civilization 7, I have three options for my purchase. The base game, again, is going to cost me $90. This founders edition is going to cost $166.99. That is 85% more than this $89.99 price tag here. It is worth noting that because I'm going to go in and see if we can find 85% more value for our purchase here with the Founders Edition. Now, these price increases are not marginal. They are very large. $130 is a lot of money. $166 is not quite double, but almost double the cost of the base game. All right, so when we go in to try and find value in the deluxe edition and the founders edition, we have to keep in mind that the purchase price for the founders edition is 85%, almost double what the base game is. If we come here to the Civilization 7 website, we'll start with the base game. Now, I believe that pre-ordering games in general has contributed a lot to why so many games are releasing unfinished or in a state that is not what you'd expect from a AAA game charging $90. However, let's give Civ the benefit of the doubt. They have a little pre-order bonus here if you pre-order the base game. You'll get the Tecumseh and Shawnee pack. That seems like reasonable value. We don't know how much this is going to cost, but hey, if you're a fan of Civ, you pre-order the base game, we'll give you a little something on top of that. That seems fair enough for them being able to get your money a little bit earlier. This is great. It's when we start coming to the deluxe and founders editions that we start running into some bigger problems. Now, everything in the deluxe edition is also in the founders edition, so to save some time, we'll just be talking about the founders edition. The founders edition includes the full base game. We don't have all the information about the full base game, but you never do before you purchase a game in general, so that's all good. We will assume that out of the $166 this would cost me, 90 of those dollars is in the base game. Now, it doesn't take long before we get into things that make me absolutely livid, and first is the early access. Play the game up to 5 days early on February 6, 2025. Civilization 7 releases on February 11th, so getting to play on February 6th seems like a nice little gift. Hey, you got the deluxe edition, you got the founders edition, you get to play our game a little bit early. But what sounds like something that's really cool and exciting, I think is incredibly unkind and unfair to a lot of consumers. For the cost of the founders edition, I could get Civilization 6, the base game, and Stardew Valley, and Frostpunk 2, and still come out ahead. I think that when we're talking about these large dollar amounts, we have to keep in mind that a lot of people who play video games don't have a ton of money kicking around for these editions, and the ask of the amount of dollars here is really high. Where this becomes a problem with early access is it's not a kindness, it is just capitalization on your anxiety or your fear of missing out. All they are doing is saying, hey, there's a lot of people who are going to be playing this game, who are excited about this game. If we release it to some people earlier and not others, it will trigger this anxiety, this fear of missing out, that my friend Bob is going to be playing Civ 5 days before I'm going to be playing Civ. I will fork up some extra money to play it early. The reason why this is unkind is it capitalizes on people's anxieties, which isn't nice, but it's also a little bit of a lie. They say the game is releasing on February 11th, but you can play the game up to 5 days early on February 6th if you give them a little bit of money. But the release date is kind of February 6th. There's not a limited amount of this. 100% of people could play Civilization 7 on February 6th. There's no cap to this. Anybody who wants to fork over extra money, and again, not an insignificant amount. If this was $2 or $5 or whatever, fair play. This is at minimum 40 Canadian dollars, all right? And I think that this is a little bit unfair because there's going to be a lot of people who don't really have that money, who have that anxiety, who have that fear of missing out. You're kind of artificially putting a barrier between your game, which is complete. This isn't a beta version. This isn't an early access version. This is the game that you purchased coming out earlier for people with more money and that can spend more money on this game. And I don't think that's very fair or very kind. Early access to games like Civilization 7 could also be done in such a cool way. They market this as a founder's edition. You are a founder of Civilization. You are here. You are excited. You are ready to go. You were here on day one, ready to play. So ready to play, we gave it to you 5 days early. However, you still need to have at least 40 Canadian dollars for the super exclusive perk of being a founder. This could be done in so many ways that is more respectful to fans who are really here for a good time on day one and excited about the game. How about early access? Maybe not even 5 days. 5 days for founders, whatever, you pay the extra money. Right? But what about 3 days for people who have another Civilization in their Steam account? You've played Civilization before. You are a true blue fan. You've paid for the other Civilization games. As a little treat, here's Civilization 7 a couple days early. What about an hours played? You've played Civilization games for 500 hours on Steam. Congratulations. You're a true blue fan. You are here on day one. You are excited. You are a founder. Here's some early access. I think it's pretty telling that they only offer this to people who give more money and not to people who can verifiably prove that this is like just on Steam that they're fans of Civilization. I know this kind of thing is possible as well because there are lots of games out there that give you benefits or perks or anything if you have a previous version of that game installed on your system. So I know this kind of thing is verifiable and checkable. Games do this all the time. It'd be super cool if early access was also given to fans, regardless of whether they had the money to pay for this. Now again, Civ 7's use of the early access is far from the most egregious. There's a lot of other things here that were otherwise going to cost money later that they are including as part of this DLC. And while I have my problems with those things that we'll talk about shortly, the early access is the one thing you kind of can't claw back. Obviously, you can't pay for more time. Early access in games, I find, is often a little unkind and a little bit predatory, and it comes across as such a gift. I don't think people think about it very much. But I think early access for games would be so much better done as a way to reward fans of your games from previous versions than it is for the fans that can afford to pay for these deluxe editions, which again, if they were a small amount more expensive, fine, but these are large purchases you're asking people to make. Well, I hope I've made clear I'm really not a fan of early access as a pre-order bonus for games. The next part of this becomes a little more difficult. We have DLC that is included in the Founders Edition, and that's hard to calculate because it's part of the value. They're assuming that you would have spent this money anyways later on in the game cycle. So if you spend it now, you'll get that included, and it's nice. It just comes into your game whenever it releases. You paid up front at the Founders Edition. You don't got to worry about this. While there's nothing inherently wrong with including DLCs or season passes or anything like that in your base game kind of Founders Edition purchase, that makes perfect sense to me. It all comes down to how much information are you giving the consumer to make an educated choice. Again, you're asking for almost double the money for the Founders Edition. So if I'm paying double the money, how much information do I have to know whether I'm making an educated choice to spend 166 Canadian dollars on your video game? Now, on one hand, there is a little bit of information. We got the Crossroads of the World collection and the Right to Rule collection. We have 2 new leaders, 4 new civs, and 4 new natural wonders, a special cosmetic bonus, and more, and that is the same for both of these collections. So we have some information, which is nice. There's going to be 2 packs. We know how many leaders, how many civs, how many wonders, but there's still a pretty big problem here in that we have no idea how much value this actually provides. We are given no information about how much these DLCs will cost outside of the Founders Edition. If they come out and they cost $5, all of a sudden this early access that we talked about was a much bigger portion of this purchase, right? If they come out and they each cost $100, like then all of a sudden we got the best deal ever with the Founders Edition. Without knowing how much these DLCs are going to cost outside of this purchase when they release, we don't know how much value we're actually getting for purchasing them as part of the Founders Edition. One can assume the whole point of this is to make these DLCs cheaper if you purchase them as part of the Founders Edition, but again, the problem exists is I don't actually know that at the time that I make my purchase. I have no idea what these DLCs are worth or what Firaxis or 2K thinks they're worth on the open market, what they are going to sell them for, and because there are unvaluable things like early access, we don't know how much they value this as part of your purchase. It's hard to come up with a calculation to know how much value I'm getting here. Now, the next problem, we are actually going to have to give Civ 7 or any video game the complete benefit of the doubt until it becomes a problem. However, we're talking about the games industry as a whole, and having DLC packs and collections in pre-order bonuses when you buy Founders Editions can be problematic. The reasoning is in the game design. Now, we have to give Firaxis and 2K and everyone the full benefit of the doubt until this game is released and the DLCs are released, and we can actually have a fair opinion of everything. However, more and more now, games are designed with the DLC in mind, which is problematic because the whole Founders Edition, the whole Deluxe Edition, they are designed to get more money from you as a consumer. These wouldn't exist if you weren't paying more money. This is not a kindness. They're not like, oh, we have cool fans, let's give them more stuff. It's we have cool fans, let's give them more stuff if they'll give us more money. So knowing ahead of time, if you're specifically a games publisher, I doubt devs do this, but it's specifically a games publisher, that you are going to try to include DLC in the purchase price of your game if you get these Founders Editions and Deluxe Editions, you're going to design the game with, min-maxing the value of the money in mind instead of the actual game. If I know as a publisher that we're making Civ 7 and the base game is going to cost $90 and I'm going to include all of these DLCs, we're immediately starting to calculate this in terms of dollars instead of the gameplay experience. How much needs to be in the base game for it to be $90? If we're going to include 8 leaders or 2 new leaders, 8 civs, whatever this is, if we're going to include this many new leaders or this many new civs, how many should we put in the base game? What is the minimum amount we can put in the base game where people will be satisfied with that purchase before we can charge extra money for these DLCs? It sounds like, going into production, this is an unreleased game that already has a lot of its DLCs kind of finalized and ready to go. This can be great from a game design perspective because knowing what DLC you want to release and doing some work on it ahead of time can help it more seamlessly integrate into the gameplay. But again, as a consumer who's trying to figure out, should I spend $166, you can't help but get that sinking feeling when you look at a page this big with this many leaders and this many wonders and this many bonuses. We don't even know how many gameplay changes these DLC packs include. You can't help but notice that it feels like they're trying to min-max the amount of money they can get from you instead of creating full value in the base game, which they are already charging $90 for. Again, we don't actually know this about Civilization 7, but this is a problem in a lot of games, and just because I like Civilization doesn't mean I want to give it the benefit of the doubt too much. A game called City Skylines 2 released recently. And when I say recently, it was a while ago. I'm going to put a graphic on screen right now that showed at the time what you got if you purchased their deluxe edition. There was a whole bunch of DLCs. This game released late in 2023. All of these DLCs included in your deluxe edition were meant to come out by Q2 of 2024. Now, Q2 of 2024 was a while ago now, a couple of months, and these DLCs are still unreleased. In fact, they just got delayed pretty indefinitely into 2025. Now, this is a problem because as a consumer, the people who purchased City Skylines 2 paid up front. They held up their end of the bargain, right? We gave you the money at the beginning, we paid our money, and the DLC they were promised has not yet arrived. Now, games companies will go here and say the Right to Rule collection contains 6 DLCs, all of which will be available on or by September 2025, subject to change, right? This subject to change is what's happening in City Skylines. They've released the game, there's other problems, they can't get to the DLCs, etc. But the price of the Founders Edition is never subject to change. The things we get in these editions isn't always subject to change. The people who purchased City Skylines 2 aren't getting some of their money back because the deal they agreed to kind of changed. You know what I mean? And so there is an inherent risk in including DLC packs like this in the purchase price of your game. One is that I cannot for the life of me figure out what kind of value as a consumer this is, costing me. I don't know how they value these DLCs on the open market, what they're selling them for. It makes me feel like they're kind of trending towards developing for the DLCs and the post content that they can make more money off of than they are towards the base game. And overall, these kinds of things just contribute, I think, to a little bit of a problem in the game industry. Now, we're going to skip the leader personas for just a moment because they're pretty Civ specific, but let's talk about the profile customizations, the Fog of War tile set, the alternate scout skin, and the Founder's Palace skin. Now, these are the kinds of things I don't really have a problem with. If you want to charge more money for cosmetic things in your game, go for it. Games are expensive to make. The people who make games deserve to be paid well. I'm not against developers creating things to charge money for. I'm just worried about the value we get as a consumer and the information we have. Profile customizations, Fog of War tile sets, Scout skins, Founder's Palace skins. These are things that have no impact on the gameplay. If you have a little bit of extra money and these things matter to you, wonderful. If they don't matter to you, great. You don't have to purchase them. I will, however, say though, I still don't know what the value is in these things. How much is this Founder's Palace skin worth? Is it just part of this DLC? Are we getting it later? You know what I mean? The alternate Scout skin. Give your Scout Recon unit a brand new look with this cosmetic outfit. Is there going to be a store with 25 Scout skins? Is this one of 25 or is this a unique one for me? I'm not really that sure. There's a lot of fine print here, but it doesn't really go over it in this main section. And so it's still hard for me to find value, but these are the kinds of things that are the least egregious. Just cosmetic things that are in your game. If you want to pay a little more money, wonderful stuff. Everybody wins. Now, the leader personas are specific to Civ, and I think are pretty problematic for Civ in general. Now, I could be interpreting this wrong based on what they've written, but maybe not. Each persona offers a new variant of an existing leader, including a different outfit and background for that leader. So far, so good. Again, cosmetic things, whatever, you paid the money, you get your cosmetic stuff, wonderful. New gameplay bonuses, and an alternative agenda that reflects a different side of their personality. The personas included in this edition will be revealed at a later date. Now, if I'm reading this correctly, there are going to be parts of the actual gameplay experience, gameplay bonuses, agendas, etc., that are only available if you were around on day one to purchase the Founders Edition. Now, to their credit, Civilization 7 will allow you to upgrade to the Founders Edition post-launch up until February 28th. So you can hop in on the 11th, you can see what this Palace skin looks like, what the Scout skin looks like, what the Fog of War tile set or the profile customizations look like, and then make a more informed upgrade at that point. You'll obviously lose out on the early access, which again, I have no idea how much they value that as part of this purchase, but whatever, that's fine. These leader personas, though, seem like they're going to be gone if you don't get them by February 28th. Now, the problem I have with this in a game like Civ is the whole point of Civilization, the whole gameplay loop of Civilization, and the whole way Civilization actually works in the real market is that it's a game with really long legs. Not everyone hops in on day one. This game will be out for 7 years before Civilization 8 comes out. People find and discover it as they go, and I do think it's a little bit lame that if you weren't there on day one, you've permanently lost access to actual gameplay mechanics that will just simply never be available for you, whether you wanted to purchase them or not. As someone who creates content, and someone who hopped into Civilization 6 kind of after the DLCs even, I think it would be incredibly unfortunate to include something cool here that I make videos about or someone else makes videos about, and then you're excited about it, 6-8 months after release, your friend's playing Civ 7, you've never heard of Civilization, you're excited about it, you hop into Civ 7, and they're playing one of these personas that has these gameplay bonuses. Like, oh, that'd be so fun, I'm going to download my game and I'm going to play that. And to have that never be available for you seems a little bit unfortunate, especially because it's, again, artificial. It's there, it's in the game, it is available. People could unlock it. They're just restricting it behind this purchase price to play on your anxiety, to play on your fear of missing out. They are creating an artificial scarcity of these personas just in order to extract a few more dollars from you when you make your purchase. I think that's going to be the end of this video, and again, I want to be clear, Civilization is far from the most egregious example of these types of practices. However, I do believe that these kinds of things are a problem. I wish we could go back to having a game that was finished, that was complete, that you just paid your money for, and you didn't have to worry about trying to figure out whether you were getting value out of these deluxe editions that at $166 cost 2 or 3 times what a normal game costs. There is also a lot of benefit of the doubt that can be given here. If you've already purchased the Founders Edition, you're probably locked in. However, there's still time for them to release what the price points of these DLCs are going to be and give people more information. There are still time to clarify a lot of these things, to give people more information when they make their purchase. However, I feel like these types of things are purely just how do we design this to extract the most amount of money for people and not how do we provide cool things for our fans. If we were providing cool things for our fans, a lot of this stuff could just be available if you were already a fan of Civ. If you played Civ in the past, if you had a certain amount of hours on Civ, there's nothing for those people. Right. And that's how I can tell, I think, that they're not really focused on the experience as a fan of Civilization. They're kind of just focused on how do we structure these editions so people will pay more money for things that are less cost intensive for us to make so we can increase our profits. Now, none of this is inherently problematic. They made the game. They can do whatever they want with it. They can have as many editions as you want, and you can buy whatever you want. This isn't me trying to tell you not to purchase the Founders Edition. If you look at this list of things and say, there's a lot of value here, I really like what they're doing, then go ahead and purchase it. That's wonderful. But I just think these types of practices contribute negatively to the overall experience for gamers. And it's not just Civilization. The more successful this is with one video game, the next time a new video game releases that you're excited for, they will double down on it. I think I've made my point well enough. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm sure this will be a controversial topic to at least some degree. And hey, I'm willing to eat my shorts here. You know what I mean? Maybe this is incredible value and I will, I'll be talking out of my ass if you watch this video 6 months from now. But for now, this is how I feel and I'd like to know how you feel as well. If you enjoyed this video or didn't enjoy this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Again, let me know what you thought in the comments. Let me know if you're purchasing Civilization 7, the Deluxe Edition or the Founders Edition. Thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one.